Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Rangers Review morning briefing for Friday, the 16th of July. I'm delighted to say we're joined this week, well, today as ever, by Johnny McFarlane. Johnny, how are we doing?
Good. Yeah, delighted to be here.
And Joshua Barry as well. Joshua, how's it going?
Yeah, all good. Thanks, Derek. All good.
Excellent stuff. A lot to talk about, gents. Let's kick off then with news that reports from Holland, from a respectable Dutch journalist in several publications, saying that Rangers' interest in Joey Veerman, which is picking up pace, saying that they have to sell before they can bring in the Dutch midfielder. We'll touch on the needing to sell part first, Johnny. I reckon that a lot of Rangers fans are sort of resigned to the fact that maybe 1-2 players will be leaving Ibrox this summer. It is a model, of course. Do you think that has to be the case before this guy is brought in?
Well, I think it would make common sense that the Rangers will continue to look to process that player trading model to the best of its potential. I think it's absolutely the right model, and many European clubs across Europe have gone down that route, like Portuguese clubs like Porto, for example. And it's something that any modern European club in a lower league had to have a think about. In terms of whether Rangers have to sell before they buy, I'm not sure about that. Rangers were able to splash out for Ryan Kent, £7 million. This is going to be a little bit less than that, of course. But I think the key thing is different times now with the pandemic. Rangers have had a season where they've lost out on quite a lot of revenue because of COVID. So it's more difficult finances. And that's not just for Rangers, that's for every club. And in fact, Rangers have done a lot more work in the transfer market than most by snapping up a Premier League player and John Lundstrom and a very, very talented Belgian striker who is one of the top scorers in the league in Fashion Sakala. So, only Rangers will know the situation with their finances and how much they have to play with. But I'd be surprised, put it that way, if players didn't go out the door. And I would expect if Veerman does come in, that they will definitely be to replace someone, as it were. But time will tell. Veerman is a number 10, isn't he? So you would be thinking of him as someone who might come in for maybe a Yanis Hadji, for example. But there hasn't been a lot of transfer talk about Yanis Hadji beyond the usual kind of scuttlebutt coming out of various sort of clickbaity type websites, but there's been nothing substantial. So it's an interesting one to see how it'll proceed.
Yeah, Joshua, you've had a look at Veerman. You've paid close attention to him. What sort of player is he, and does he fit into Gerrard's side?
Yeah, I think he would. I think he's played more domestically in the left with three, so similar to the role that Kenneth Kamara would play in Europe. And I would see him. I think he'd probably call himself an attacking midfielder, but he has played deeper too. A pretty flexible player. Averaged. I was just looking yesterday actually at his stats. Averages 13 passes to the final thirds per game, and that's playing in a side who has less the ball than Rangers, and it's about 3 passes on average more into the final third than Kamara. And that's one statistic. That doesn't necessarily mean that he's a better forward passer. I think we see with Kamara in the Euros, if you watched him in the Euros, he was far more of an 8 than he plays for Rangers, because he's tasked with holding possession, cleaning up opposition counter-attacks and playing that disciplined role really well next to Steven Davis. I think if Veerman were to come in, looking at a purely squad sense, having Joe Aribo, Yanis Hadji, Glenn Kamara in there, I think only comes in if one of those leave. I don't think it's going to be Aribo. I agree with Johnny. It's probably going to be Kamara, which I'll be very sad about, or Hadji. But yeah, I think a really exciting player, and I think someone that they could mould to play in that deeper role next to Davies, and having a progressive passer, as we've seen with Kamara, who's really improved his progressive passing from that deeper role. I think could be really valuable, and he's great age, 22. 20, I think maybe 23, 22, 23. So if he was to come in, I'd be really excited about him. But I do think it would be if someone leaves in the first instance because of the role he normally plays for his club.
Yeah, one player who has arrived and is in the door, creating much excitement, is Fashion Sakala. We all seen the videos yesterday of Well, the one walking into the Ibrox Trophy room was one of my favourites. He was blown away, of course. Every supporter seems to love this guy already, Johnny. He's certainly winning the hearts of the fans already. Excited to see him in action.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, listen, he was so likeable in those videos. He did these long-form YouTube video interviews, didn't he? Back when he was at home over the summer, and he just came across so well, so passionate about his move, and so excited by the move. And that's something you don't see that often nowadays. You know, that a player who's genuinely overcome with excitement, and that just came through with Fashion Sakala. So I think it's no surprise that the fans are excited to see what he can do. And, you know, he's got an incredible skill set, especially for European football. I think if Rangers can mould him through the coaching of Michael Beale into an even better player, they could have one or watch for this one, frankly. I mean, I thought we had an outstanding article on the website yesterday. If you've not seen it, guys, go and check it out, by Adam Thornton, a deep dive into what Fashion Sakala will bring to Rangers. And if you read that, you can't fail to but be excited about what he has to offer.
Yeah, I spoke to Freddie Franz, former Dundee United defender. He's, of course, played in Belgium. He played against them. He says he's a cracking player and he'll do really well at Rangers. Joshua, Fashion Sakala for you. You excited to see him play? Do you think he's do you think he can play alongside guys like Morelos, or he's a different sort of player, isn't he?
Yeah, he's a different sort of player, and I think, as Johnny touches on, there's a great article on the website, and also a great video which speaks about the move to more of a two-man frontline, which I think Fashion Sakala was signed with the view towards. Because if you look at Adam's article yesterday, he speaks about how Fashion Sakala effectively is improvement year on year. He charts his improvement year on year, looking at his kind of shot distribution and all these things. But one of the big benefits he had was playing alongside someone. So I think whether that be a Roof or a Morelos domestically, I think he offers us something different because of his skill set. But I think the most interesting thing will be in Europe, because we all know how good Rangers are in their 4-3-3 kind of mid-block. And the goal, for example, the red card against Benfica, that Ryan Kent run across a kind of straight run across the back line of a defence who sit high. I think against stronger opposition in Europe, and especially in Europe when we want to counter-press teams and maybe try and win the ball back quickly, I think that's when you'll see his physical attributes at their best. But I think domestically as well, I think it will take him time to get used to playing against a low block and get used to playing against a deeper defence. Because although he's one of the top scorers in the league, in the Belgian league, he's not necessarily played for one of the strongest teams. So I think it'll be really interesting. I think it will take time for him to mould into this Rangers side, but I think you could see him play really successfully with a Roof or a Morelos, or even a Nitton up front, who I think we're going to touch on later.
Yeah, Johnny, he sort of fits in the model with this guy as well. I mean, they've got him for nothing from Belgium, a fantastic bit of business. He's at the right age, it appears like, and watching those interviews that he's done back in his homeland, he seems like the sort of character that fits the bill that Steven Gerrard wants.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think first and foremost, this is a really clever move by Rangers to get a Bosman signing in. And listen, you've seen that with Lundstrom as well. It's getting top quality players in for nothing. And the club, I don't think it's done enough of that over the years. I'm of an age when I remember a guy called Jean-Alain Boumsong who came in and was terrific. He came in from, I think it was Auxerre in France, and played 6 months and was away for £8 million to Newcastle. And these kind of deals that have been done over the years have often yielded great fruit for Rangers. It means you're not splashing out that huge transfer fee, but you're able to bring in real quality. In terms of his character, I don't think there's going to be any questions about that. It's obviously, I don't know the guy personally, none of us do, but just watching those interviews, you've got a real sense of his character, and he's a humble guy. And I think that's the kind of guy that Steven Gerrard wants around the place. And I'll be just really interested to see how he adapts to Scottish football, because the one element that I think he might struggle with is there's a lot of low blocks in the Scottish game in terms of how they're going to approach Rangers. So there's a lot of teams sitting really tight, really compact, really deep and saying, OK, Rangers, come and break us down. And Sakala's biggest weapon, I would say, is his pace. So a bit like other players that have come to Rangers and kind of struggled in that regard. For example, Brandon Barker, to some extent Jordan Jones. You don't have the same paces that they don't have the same space, sorry, as they would have at other clubs to utilise that electric pace. And I wonder, Joshua, how do you see that? Because you've also watched a lot of this guy. Do you think he's going to have to make a big adaptation for that?
Yeah, it was hard to tell, isn't it? Because we've not really seen him. Because playing for, I guess, either of the top two in Scotland is such a unique situation in terms of the way teams set up against you. You see, last season we literally played a strikerless formation, and the difficulty with it, I think, in my opinion, with a game like that is it's not only that you have to break down a defence, but it's the space that you have to play in is so minimal. So if you look at that Motherwell game, for example, where we won 3-1 at home. There was just no space in that first half, and you can put any team in that situation, and it's hard. And you hear players and coaches speak about that. They say if you're playing attack versus defence in training, it is so hard to break down a team that sits so deep because the space isn't there. So I think at first maybe yes, but as I say, I think him and Lundstram, because I don't know with Lundstram as well if they have signed him with a view of playing him alongside Davies in domestic football. I think in Europe their roles are quite defined, and in Europe their roles are quite clear. I think Lundstram will fit on the right of a 3. I think he'll give us those driving runs through the centre, and I think that athleticism, if you look back to the Slavia Prague game, say the one difference between the two sides is they did look bigger, stronger, and they had a couple of players that could really run through us, and we didn't, I think, boast that in return. So I think they're both signed with a view of that, with a view, as you say, Johnny, the Bosman market. And then it will maybe take them time to get used to playing against these teams who come to Ibrox and, as you say, really have no intention of going forward in the first instance, but want to restrict space because it is such a unique type of game state to play within.
Yeah. Last but not least, Cedric Itten is given an interview to RTV. The big Swiss says he's loving life at Ibrox. He says it has been difficult, of course, when he arrived last season, with not just moving to another country, of course, but the COVID situation around that, not able to go out really properly and see family and friends. What have you made of Cedric Itten? Johnny, that last season was a bit difficult for him to break into that side. I mean, it's understandable given the striking prowess that Rangers have. Big season for him this season.
Yes, it is. I like Cedric Itten. I think he's got a lot of qualities because he's the modern player in that he's got a bit of pace, strong, he can finish. But I don't think he's had an awful lot of opportunities to really show what he can do. You really need to get 90-minute game time, starts to show what you can do as a striker at Rangers. Be expected to come in and have little cameos here and there. It's really, really difficult for players to make things work on the back of that. It's hard going. He'll need to do more. There's no doubt about it. And I think Steven Gerrard will expect that of his players. If you want to get into this side, you need to show real quality because there's top quality around you. But he's got the skill set to become a terrific player. And I think it'll be interesting, we've kind of discussed this on the website in a couple of articles, whether or not Rangers might go more to a 2 up front scenario in terms of the formation going forward. And that might be some games, it might not be at all. But I think if you saw the game against Celtic, the 4-1 game at Ibrox at the end of the season there, they pulled Ryan Kent right into the centre where he was causing absolute havoc. I mean, he gave Scott Brown the chasing of his life. And then you had Morelos and Itten right up front, 2 number 9s. And they caused sorry, it wasn't Itten, sorry. Morelos and Roof in that game up as 2 number 9s who were really, really effective and caused a lot of damage. And perhaps Itten would suit being part of that because that's how he played at St. Gallen, his previous club where he scored so many goals and was the second top scorer in the Swiss League. So perhaps that's a way for Itten to become more integral to the Rangers side going forward.
Yeah, Joshua, of course, we just touched on Fashion Zakala arriving. Is that the striking forward positions really is so competitive, isn't it? How do you see Cedric forcing his way into that first team, or is he just happy with being a bit part player, would you say?
I mean, I think if you look, although it's tempting to look at, he scored 6 goals last season, but I think it's important to not forget the goal he scored against Motherwell, which where we went 2-1 up. You see, that is the game the 2 seasons before that really had screwed over our season. And I don't think, and as well, our unbeaten league season was because of the header he scored away at Motherwell. So although he maybe didn't come in and score 15 goals, I think from the bench to score 6 goals, you're right, in a competitive forward line in the year of what last year was. I don't think that can be understated. And as I say, and that's the benefit of having a bigger squad. That's what we've lacked in recent years. It's not, when building a squad, it shouldn't necessarily be a view of how do we make sure that every player has enough minutes, as much as how do we make this work for Rangers and make sure that when we have a Motherwell at home or a Motherwell away, indeed, that we have the options to break them down. So I think Airlie gives us something different. I agree with Johnny. I think he looks better in a 2. And we've not really seen him in a 2 because when he came in at the start of the season, I'm thinking of the St Mirren Cup defeat, when he played more off the right against Kilmarnock twice. Against Kilmarnock specifically, he was there to do a job, and he was there to occupy their left back, try and get headers at the back post, which didn't maybe necessarily work in the home game. But away from home, which again, Kilmarnock away from home has been the Achilles heel for Gerrard. He did have a big impact as well. So I think he does have more to do. But I think it's not as if he's come in and had a season where he's really failed to impress. I think his moments have just been a little bit more subtle. And I think it will suit him to play in more of a 2, domestically speaking, just to have a little bit more support around him. And he loves that kind of right half space. You remember his goal against Lech Poznan away from home. And he just looked so comfortable drifting into that position. And it was clear as day from our view on TV that he was going to go onto his right foot, but he still kidded the defender. So I think it'll be a really interesting season for him. But I think most importantly for Rangers, to have these options is what we need if we want to stay on top.
Yeah,
that was the game, wasn't it? That was the game that I think if Rangers fans are looking at his career so far, will give you the most hope that he can actually become a real player for Rangers, because he was excellent that night.
Yeah, totally agree. So it would just be it would be interesting to see. He also hasn't necessarily, apart from that St Mirren Cup defeat, he's not been given maybe 4 or 5 games in a row. And I think you're right, Johnny, when you say it. You know, it's so easy to look and say he's not made an impact in 60 minutes. But as well, when players are coming on to games when maybe the game's a little bit dead, it's hard to make an impact. So yeah, again, you maybe expect one. If Morelos does go, that'll mean it's his opportunity to step up, because we have really 5 players that can play in that central striker role when you include Defoe as well, who's played a lot in pre-season. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there.
Yeah, big season for him ahead. Excellent stuff, guys. Well, thank you very much for everyone for interacting with the morning briefing this morning. We'll be back again on Monday, but of course, plenty of stuff to keep you occupied. Over the weekend, we'll be covering the Arsenal pre-season friendly tomorrow. All looking forward to that one. And there's, of course, great content on your way already this morning on the website. The second part of that explosive Pedro Caixinha interview that Johnny kindly carried out. So keep your eyes peeled on the website for that, rangersreview.co.uk, and also on our social media accounts on Facebook and on Twitter as well. But that's all that's left to say is thanks very much, Johnny, for coming on again.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Joshua, enjoy your weekend, buddy.
You too, guys. Thanks.
Just before we shut off here, I just want to make sure, Josh, are you in a sauna?
I asked him that at the start.
You coming in live from Finland?
I think you need to explain where you are, Joshua.
Yeah, well, we had a gas leak in our home, so we were going away for the weekend. So we thought we'd go while it's getting fixed. We'd go away early. So I'm in my friend's dad's office pod outside. So it does look like a sauna, but it's a little sunroom. So I'm looking forward to working from here today. It might be as hot as a sauna when the sun comes up. Never know.
Yeah, might get a bit heated in there. Excellent stuff. Well, cheers, lads. Enjoy your weekend, and we'll see you all on Monday morning.